Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to week 5. Dr. Bob here. So, we are just about halfway through the term. Next week starts the midterm. I'm going to talk a little bit about the midterm and what you can expect today, but I'll really go into more detail on the video next Monday. Okay, and also, of course, if you look up the assignment come Monday, I may even open it up Sunday. But if you look at the assignment, it's pretty self-explanatory. You're all bright people. I'm sure you'll figure out the instructions. But okay, so I hope you all enjoyed the Super Bowl. A lot of my friends are complaining about it, said it was dull or boring. But what the heck? I had a good time. We had a lot of good food. Grandpa Carlos's shredded beef tacos. My wife made a really delicious dessert, a chocolate peanut butter lasagna. My God, really good. Just what I need. Anyway, welcome. I hope you enjoyed the game if you watched it. And I don't know how many of you may have seen, they had a program on earlier in the day about the NFL and their move to create more diversity among the coaching ranks. And it is rather astonishing that there aren't more African American coaches coming through the pipeline. And the way they get hired on is, obviously, they come in, some low-level assistant to the assistant, coach type of thing, and work their way up through the system. But the problem is they're not coming into the system, and that's in a way the impact of institutional racism, and kind of a little bit of what we're going to talk about today in the discussion. You recall from last week when we looked at institutional racism, the idea that just because laws were passed, for example, 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson in the Supreme Court decision that said a school should be separate but equal. But we know that didn't happen. They weren't equal. They were separate, that's for sure. And then it took till 1954 we had Brown versus the Board of Education. But again, all this meant was, well, if you do discriminate, you're a school or a school district that discriminates based on somebody's race or ethnicity, then you're breaking the law. But it didn't automatically mean the schools opened their doors and welcomed everybody, right? We still see some of this today. Okay, so that's a good thing to see, and I wish the NFL success on that. We need to see more diversity. I come from a time when it was believed that black men couldn't play quarterback, weren't smart enough. And you'd see these great quarterbacks in college, these young black men, they get into the NFL, they want to make it into running backs or receivers or something else. So it is good to see, someone like Warren Moon, who broke the mold there, and McNair and some of the other early African-American quarterbacks who came into the league and had a great deal of success, paved the way for some of this. Okay, I'll get off of that and talk about the civil rights movement. This week's discussion board question is about the limits and successes of the civil rights movement. If you look at the successes, well, most of them occurred in court through the NAACP. Again, you go back to things like the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, Equal Housing Law. And again, just because these laws passed, they did make it better, particularly better for lower to middle class African Americans, right? They hadn't done much for poor African Americans. There still seems to be quite a cycle there. And that's where institutional racism, institutional discrimination comes in. So, yeah, there were successes, but there's still quite a few limits on equality between the races, obviously. So that's the discussion board question today. And the second part of that question has to do with what occurred with F Street. Now, F Street is not exactly a social movement, right? It was really more of what we call a social action. This is when a group, a large group in this case, came together and again used a multitude of methods for success. We used the legislature, didn't have a lot of success there at first. We used the courts, again, not a lot of success there. What really succeeded was the March on the Strip, because what we see occurred is once you hit a place like Las Vegas in their economy, it gets the phones ringing off the hook in places like Las Vegas. You have a lot of casino owners calling the governor, what the heck's going on down here? We got people marching on the strips, not good for business. And once that happened, then we got calls from the legislature, hey, come on in, let's talk about this, and things changed. Another book I wanted to talk to you about was Storming Caesar's Palace. This occurred much earlier. In fact, I interviewed one of the ladies here. You might recognize Jane Fonda here. But they actually did a march down the strip, stormed into Caesar's Palace, and shut it down. It made international news. And again, what happened, this was about welfare rights at the time. Many of the black women who came from the South worked at places like Caesar's Palace as maids. But during the slow times, they were laid off, and they didn't qualify for unemployment, really, and they weren't making any money to support their families, right? And they couldn't get welfare either. So they did this march, and the laws, again, were changed. So anyway, that's our discussion for you today. I see I went a little bit over my 5 minutes. Just real briefly again on the midterm. Coming up next week, I'll open it early, probably this weekend. Maybe out of the goodness of my cholesterol-infused heart. I might do it Saturday. Let you get a jump on it. You have the whole week to work on it, but that's next week. I'll see you then. Take care.